Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Jens and in today's video I'll be showing you how to use a GetXController. Traditionally in Flutter, what you will do is create a stateful widget and declare your variables within the widget itself. Whenever you want to see the changes happening in real time, you'll have to call the setState method and change the variable and see sort of the changes happening in real time. This approach is not necessarily a bad one, but there's just a few things to consider when using it in this way. Number one is that when you call the setState method, the whole widget tree will refresh only for one change. The second drawback is the variables that you declare inside the widget. You would have to pass it down to every other widget if you want to see the same variable on another page. And thirdly is debugging. It might get hard to figure out exactly where the issue is coming from if there's no clear path towards the variables and where the changes happened. So how we could solve this is by separating our UI components from our business logic components. So we would separate all our variables in our controllers and all our UI in our views, thereby making them very independent from one another. So if there is a change happening, it won't affect the UI layer. The UI will still run very smoothly, and also it's really easy to see where the issue would be coming from if you have a controller with all your variables set in one area. So now I'll show you the basic setup on how to use the GetXController. So what I'm going to do first is create another folder inside the app folder, and let's call it modules. And I'll create two folders, one for our home and one for our login. And inside our home, we'll create a directory called controllers, and we'll do the same for login. All right, so here is where we'll actually create our controllers, and let's just call the first one home controller. And here we can also just create a login controller. All right. So it's pretty easy and simple to use. All we have to do is create a class, and let's call it home controller, and it will extend GetXController. There we go. And the nice thing here is that each controller has a init method, a dispose method, a ready method, and a close method. So you can actually set everything you want when you dispose of the controller, or when you want to initialize what should happen with it. Let me just copy this all over to the login controller as well. And let's just call it login controller. Okay, so I'm just going to work with a 1 for now. So as you can see, there is a onInit method, onClose method, and a onReady method. So these methods are pretty much what it says. Whenever you first create this controller, you call this is what's being run, so you can implement certain functions in here. When you dispose or close the controller, this is what happens. And when it's ready to use, there's also an onReady method. So let's create a variable called count. Let's also create a function called increment. All right, so the next thing I want to explain is the different types of variables that you get. Now, what we could do is use the normal variables, integers, strings, lists, and so on. But for GetXController specifically, if you want to see this variable change in your widget, what they have is a different one called RX. So you have, for example, RX int, you have an RX RX double, you have an RX list. So you would use it the same way as you would use the normal variable, except if you want to refresh this widget inside your this variable inside your widget. So how we will do that is, instead of making an integer, we'll say RX int. And as you can see here, you can't actually set it to a variable itself. You have to either say .obs or you can say RX int with an initial value of 0. And if you want to change this variable, you can set the value. So instead of saying count plus plus, you say count dot value plus plus. This is one of the big differences. It's not very, it's easy to get used to. So instead of integer, RX integer, RX list, RX double, all of these and so on. So just to show you here, if we want to use the onInit method, we can set the count to 10 or the count.value to 10. Count is 0. Once you initialize the controller, the value becomes 10. And let's say if you want to dispose it, we can set it back to 0. Okay, so there we have our controller. So that's it for this video, guys. This is just the basic setup. If you have any questions, please comment down below and like and subscribe to this channel if you want to see more of these types of videos. In the next video, I'll be covering two widgets called GetView and GetWidget, which is what you'll use when you actually create your different pages. But anyways, thank you for watching and see you in the next one. Bye bye.